Hello, and welcome everyone. My name is Luca, and I'm going to be your host today for your CTO Craft Bytes. Today we're going to discuss FinOps as your unexpected profitability ally. And if this is the first time a CTO Craft Byte, just spend a couple of seconds and tell you a bit more about what we do. CTO Craft Byte provides a learning and mentoring community for senior technology leaders such as yourself, with a community of thousands of leaders, annual conferences, mentoring groups, one-to-one coaching, as well as exclusive courses and workshops through their campus platform. Community membership is free, so don't worry about it. And if you're looking for leading technology teams, or you want to expand your career, or want to jump onto this community, please get involved. They're great. So I see already people joining in. That's fantastic. We'll just get started, and hopefully we can see even more people coming through. So my name is Luca. I am going to be talking to you today about FinOps, as I said. We're going to have an agenda of 3 main chapters, so to speak. We're first going to demystify what FinOps means. We're going to see some tactical approaches and also some strategic approaches to this topic, right? It's a pretty hot topic. It's been thrown around from quite some time in the cloud and technology community. I hope today we can dive a bit deeper into it and see if there is any practical applications for you folks. So who am I? Why am I talking to you about this? So I'm part of DoIT. DoIT is a global premier partner for both AWS and Amazon Web Services and Google Cloud Platform. I'm a technical account manager and also FinOps practitioner. I've been with them since 2023. Prior to that, I had a bunch of different roles, both in training and solutions architecture and pre-sales at VMware, Microsoft, and AWS, namely. I'm Italian originally, but I've been around quite some time, in quite some places in Europe. So who knows where I'm going to go next. I also have some certifications, last of which is again FinOps certification. So I just want to mention that throughout this presentation, you have a Q&A panel on the side of the interface. Please use it. We're going to have some time later and throughout the presentation to go through your questions. I already see some activity there in the chat, so great to see you folks. But again, please use the Q&A button and Q&A section. We're going to go through some of those questions if we can. And of course, we'll make time for them. No worries. So let's get started with FinOps, and let's get started with its basics, right? So FinOps is a term that's been kind of focused and kind of institutionalized by the FinOps Foundation, which is a no-profit foundation part of the Linux Foundation. And the idea here again is to create a community around practitioners of this topic. So there's most of the content you're gonna see today is attributable to the FinOps Foundation, and most of the work that we have done is in line with the FinOps Foundation mission itself. But let's get into the definition of FinOps, right? If I ask technology leaders and even technology practitioners, what is FinOps? Again, it's a portmanteau. It's a combination of 2 words, right? Operations and finance. And that creates that kind of feeling of, it's a cost optimization practice, is a governance thing, is an accounting piece, maybe financial piece. There's some cost awareness, visibility element to it, chargeback, showback practices, kind of encompassing all of that, but it's not only that. So we're going to double click on this in a second. Also, when we have been engaging with customers and we've been engaging with communities across our customer base, we've seen that also identify what is not FinOps, and it's not only cost optimization. Some of the typical challenges we've seen is that if we focus on cost optimization for technology-driven companies, you get this kind of exchange between tech leaders or developers and engineers that make a lot of effort into optimizing their applications, but then the people that are holding the budget or the finance people are also not seeing that kind of effort reflected in the bill, because for example in your cloud bill or for your cloud vendor bill, you might have optimized something, but optimization doesn't mean you're materializing cash flow. And so that's why the finance people come back and say, okay, well, we've seen the bill has been increased, but that again maybe is because the engineering people made room for more experimentation, more acceleration into development and stuff like that. So this back and forth is really not the best way to manage cloud budgets specifically. Also because, again, as you probably are aware, cloud is a metered service, so to speak. You pay, in theory, you pay for what you use. That's kind of the headline. So FinOps is coming, has come, actually after, let's say, a decade of experimentation on cloud, a decade of acceleration or usage of the cloud, but a decade also of, let's say free for all type of cloud usage, right? There was no governance, no idea about how to really optimize the budgets and optimize the consumption for cloud. So the official definition of FinOps is something I will be, I'm showing you here, is an operational framework and a cultural practice, let's not forget about that maximizes the business value of the cloud, enables timely data-driven decision-making, and creates financial accountability through collaboration between engineering, finance, and business teams. The idea here is that we don't consider cloud anymore just someone footing the bill or someone asking to slash that bill, but we consider purpose in investments in cloud technologies, and we also consider purpose in optimization of investments of those cloud technologies. So it's not only going to be the best deal possible to pursue, it's not going to be only the best investing money into a technology that we hope is going to make some money for us later on, but it's a continuous control, it's continuous checks and balances, it's a continuous improvement over the usage of the cloud that keeps us in with line of sight of the business value of our investments, right? It's just connecting the dots at this point with everything else we were doing in our company. We also double click on that on the cloud. So looking for some basics around what this means is that, as I said, FinOps is coming from a FinOps foundation. There is a community of thousands and tens of thousands, I should say, of practitioners. And they publish a survey every year. This is the state of FinOps. And for 2024, as you can see here, the respondents are, we can see some of the statistics. Respondents are, namely North America, but also EMEA has a good component. And also the respondents of this survey are, as you can see, skewed towards the senior side of things, right? So senior engineers, senior leaders, managers, directors, VP or C levels. I think the survey represents a good a snapshot of the I would say the community size, and also I would say that the director, C-level executives is actually more represented than the average company size. So it's quite important that FinOps is becoming front and center for executives. Right, so we're looking into tapping into 55 billion of annual spend out of this community. So that management, that's the bill that's been that's the amount of money that's been managed by the community members. So it's quite a statistical relevance. As I said, also the FinOps component, so whoever puts in motion FinOps and drives FinOps, it's been reporting primarily to you guys. So to chief technology officers, CIOs, in Europe also chief financial officers. We have, as you can see from the statistics here, there's a bit of twist in EMEA. But I would also say that this is important because it's a high visibility element. It's something that technology leaders are driving in their organizations, right? So that's why we're here. That's why we're talking about it today. Well, the FinOps Foundation ideally has a process around it, or at least has a framework around it, right? Sorry. And the framework is comprehensive, I would say. What you see here is probably someone who's done their stint at McKinsey or these big consulting companies created those slides and these frameworks to just give us a snapshot of what it really is. I'm not going to go through all of that with you, but what I will kind of highlight is that there is a structured approach to it. There are levers and tools and mechanisms you can put in motion in your company to activate this function. And the purpose of today is just to simplify and kind of focus on the most important things that you can actually do, the tactical approach, and then for the strategic approach, you can maybe expand it a bit more later on. However, I rest assured that the framework is not something that's vaporware. The framework is actually built on practices, built on companies of all sizes, as you've seen from the statistics, and it's directed to specific resources inside the company. There are a few principles that you can read through here, and again, all of those information is publicly available in the FinOps website, FinOps Foundation website. But on a high level, I would say that the principles are the tenets that drive the practice. So we want to have this kind of cultural foundations ready, set up for us. And then the practice will work through different domains. Those domains represent, as you can see here, the understanding of the cloud usage and costs, the quantification of the business value, the optimization of the cloud usage and costs, and again, the management of the practice itself. Thanks, Andy, for the link. Really appreciate it. And then, within these domains, there are some really laser-focused capabilities, things that you can really actually do in order to activate those domains. Then there are personas, allied personas, and also most importantly, there are different. The how is really done in phases. So there are 3 phases: information or inform, optimize, which is the actual activation part, and then the operation, which is the reporting. So inform, optimize, and operate. You go through this cycle and continuously improve your approach. And then there are different maturity levels: crawl, walk, and run. Just normal taxonomy here on which maturity level you're at. Don't over-index on this stuff because, again, this is a framework that is supposed to be abstracted from or applicable for any kind of enterprise. You know your organization better. You know what you can pick and what you cannot pick. Today, we're going to kind of dive a bit deeper into our experience as Do It, as myself been practicing this with customers for a while, and we'll see, how that applies to your organizations. Again, the distilled version of it, the TLDR, is with FinOps, you want to activate an enhanced visibility capability. So you want to see more of your cloud costs, more also in understanding of what those costs mean for you. You also want to activate a ruthless accountability function, which means that cloud is not only a cost center, people are responsible, but not responsible for the spend, responsible for the type of usage you're going to be having. And then there is an energetic feedback loop. You're not shying away to do something about optimization of your cloud consumption and aligning your cloud consumption to the business values of your company. That's kind of the, as I said, TLDR version. As I mentioned, the framework has multiple phases and maturity levels. I just want to initially give you some kind of examples of how this practically has been done with customers. This is really low level, but hopefully can set the scene for us. In 3 phases: inform, optimize, and operate, and we have 3 different maturity levels. So, for example, on a crawl level, which team is driving our costs, right? Do we know this? Maybe we don't. And again, this is kind of the information phase where we drive visibility. Maybe on a higher maturity level, we are looking into the efficiency metric for them. which means, are they wasting resources? Are they using all the optimization capabilities they have at the maximum? What's their target? Do we have any targets for that? Kind of questions. And then, of course, a link to the unit metrics, right? A link to our marginal benefits, which I'm going to dive a bit deeper into a second. But ideally, we are looking into, for example, how much our cloud cost is costing us per user, for example, per subscription or per customer environment, that kind of stuff. On the optimize phase, we are looking into rate optimizations that have been deployed. Like, for example, do we have a discount as an enterprise on our cloud consumption? Do we maybe have a contract with a third-party vendor that's giving us a discount, or are we using the cloud-native discount options that are available? We're not talking about how we're using them at this stage. We're just interested into the which ones are we using. Then, of course, how well are they used, and which, when, and how we're gonna trigger new implementations of those optimizations. So you see, it really is a step-by-step process that helps us into ease our way in the framework. And then on the operation phase, right? The first one is just read the reports, right? Read the reports with a cadence, read the reports with a purpose, not just browse through them and hope nobody in finance will flag them. Explain maybe the cost variances is another way of identifying maturity, like month over month, why our spenders went high or went lower. These explanations, require a high level of awareness of how you're consuming the cloud. And then, of course, you use this data on a more mature level to revise budgets and forecasts. The FinOps driver, right? So the person or the function or the team that's going to be responsible for FinOps inside your organization is a really unicorn level resource, because they will be able to talk to leadership, as we've seen. CTOs are the reporting line for this kind of function. They have to be talking engineering talks, because they have to be able to dive deeper into the cloud environments. Also, they have to be able to understand the financial implications and also the business implications. So really, while maybe we can consider the budget and money the common language across all these functions, really the FinOps practitioner is someone that's able to dip their toes into each of these areas, understand them profoundly, and being able to find a common language across them all. So it's not an easy function to implement. It's not an easy function to hire for, and it's that's why you've seen in the statistics that is skewed towards senior level figures. Quickly, I want to dive a bit into the unit economics. I mentioned that before. The idea behind cloud unit economics is a definition that's applied to other parts of the business, but is particularly relevant for FinOps, because the idea of cloud unit economics is really the analytical approach that is aimed at, as you can see here, maximizing the business value of cloud initiatives, right? Because you want to, when you're investing in cloud, you want to identify what are your margins or the marginal metrics, which is a way you drive efficiency. So again, you can understand how much of your sold goods is costing, how much revenue you get for those sold goods, right? It could be services, it could be subscriptions, it could be user licenses, whatever you're into. And then, both from the cloud costs and the revenue that's generated through it, you want to identify the profit, right? So the idea here is to collect cloud consumption data, do something, and then profit. This is especially important right now that we are on the verge of or maybe you're already into a huge push in investments towards AI, which I couldn't do a technology conference or technology webinar without mentioning AI. But you can see that from the state of FinOps, the respondents of the survey really are investing in AI, and so far they've seen either no impact or they've seen impact with costs rapidly increasing, right? So that's really opening the floodgates to these huge investments. There's a huge hype, as you can understand, and you know. There's a huge way of driving towards that idea. But then again, how do you identify your margins in that in this space? When you're investing, when you are competing with other companies that maybe are you're competing for the same kind of users and say in the same space, you don't slow yourself down by just adding red tape. But the idea of FinOps is that you have prepared the machine that when those investments come to fruition, you already have an optimization path to drive your competitors out of the boundary, because what you want to do is just you want to be more efficient with your investments, deliver products at the same speed or faster ideally, and get more revenue out of them, right? And FinOps is kind of a motion that helps you to identify those areas and those profits. So it's particularly relevant for us in this day and age. 6 months, we do this webinar again and we'll see how that changed. But for now, it's quite important. So tactical approaches. How do we drive these FinOps capabilities to fruition, right? Again, I will heavily rely on the survey, and I will tell you that our responders, or the FinOps survey responders, in cloud spend, there are 3 buckets, right? 0 to 50 million per year, 15 to 100 million, 100 million plus per year. All of them are just saying, hey, we just want to reduce waste. That's the main priority, right? And that means that effectively there is a huge idea, there is a huge perception of that we need to have more efficiency. More efficiency means that you can act and you can move a few levers about it. But again, we're going to focus on the quick wins, or the things you can actually do in your organizations right now, from next week, from today, to start raking up that bit of cash flow in, right? Because you're investing in cloud, maybe you're using the cloud, but are you using the cloud in an efficient manner? So we develop this kind of quick win playbook. It's just a name for us that, for a motion that's made of 3 steps, right? And again, it's following the FinOps principles. So we're not kind of inventing something new. It's following the slipstream of FinOps. And you can find echoes of that in the FinOps framework, but it's just our interpretation that goes really straight to the bone. The first one is cost visibility. So cost visibility means that as a company or as tech leaders, you want to have your own taxonomy. So tagging or labeling every resources that you have in the cloud where possible. You can also do this retroactively. For those of you who are not familiar, tagging and labeling is a way to from cloud vendors to tag resources, and those tags can mean anything. It's just a name and a value that you put together. And this helps customers with creating their own taxonomy, as I said, of the resources. You don't have to be a scientist about it. You can just, and so most of the companies we worked with already have something similar, because they name the resources according to what they do, right? That intuitively gives you that kind of idea. This kicks off the previous effects, because when you're building reports of your costs and you see how much of each of these tags or each of the resources tagged or named in a specific way have been consuming, you get the previous effect or previous effect, where you have live feedback about how much each of the team is consuming. And that increases the visibility. Whenever you don't have something that's taggable, right, it can be named, you allocate it. So you have a bucket of those things that you don't really have a taxonomy for. You allocate it to a specific cost center, cost function, but at least you know, and you have that mass that you can track, okay? The other piece is, of course, you want to use a vendor native workload isolation best practices. So, for example, Amazon Web Services has a top level hierarchy and something that's called organizations. Then within organizations, you have organizational units. Within organizational units, you have accounts. And within accounts, you have services. And then within services, you have resources. This is native. This is something you cannot change, but you can lean on it in order to create your own cloud structure, right? So you could have organizations that's representing your company, and then you can have accounts that are dedicated to each team, and within organizational units dedicated to each team, and then accounts that represent different environments, so tests, prod, something like that. And also, this allows you to take a look at the costs in different dimensions. As I said, accounts, services, SKUs, which type of services you're consuming, tags, names, whatever. We do it. We do have a service that does this. A product that does this. It's called the Navigator, which basically pulls that data from the cloud native business and shows it back to customers following completely customizable hierarchy of resources. And we can pull trends, we can pull forecasts, we can pull also costs that are coming from different directions. And this is a multi-cloud tool that we have developed in order to support customers in this. This is FinOps certified. So again, you will find it on the FinOps website. But again, this is something that helps customers to go through their journey. Now, we have the cost visibility. We have set up this kind of higher awareness / visibility motion. Now we go into the waste reduction, the practical part. And this is, your tech teams might know better, or you, if you're a hands-on CTO, you know how this is a spectrum. And that spectrum is always a cost opportunity spectrum. So I can sit with you and say, hey, in order to drive your efficiency, you should completely change your technology stack. And then it's going to take you 6 months or even 1 year of engineering time that you're not investing in something that, increases your market share. That's not a waste reduction. The idea here is to have a cost opportunity. I have a cost opportunity ratio that's really, really skewed towards the side of the cost, not to the side of the opportunity. So in this spectrum, there are some different things we can talk about, highly technical ones, but I can assure you through our practice with customers there's been no customer that we have engaged with that didn't have some waste in their resources, didn't have some addressable waste in their resources. And on average, what we have seen is that with those quick wins, a low-hanging fruit, call it however you want, typically is sized at 10% of their cloud bill. Whether it's because they forgot to shut down some resources, whether it's because maybe they're not using their resources efficiently, but things that are really, I wouldn't say one click away, but half day of engineering time to address, usually sized up around 10% of the cloud bill. Now, 10% of 1 million is 100K. So you could see how this really adds up pretty quickly. But really, there is always this kind of waste addressable in even the most optimized customers. And again, I want to stress the optimization is a spectrum. The waste reduction is a spectrum. And what I'm defining here is the type of optimization that you can get and materialize with the minimum engineering time, right? If you talk to cloud vendors, they will tell you that there are huge ways of better improvements if you commit to here, or if you change your tech stack, or if you do that. No, I'm here focusing on the things that you can, turn off with a click, or just switch to one configuration instead of the other. So that's the type of thing I want to focus on. And again, we do it. We've been working with, we are managing over 3 billion of cloud spend daily. and we know how we can achieve that. And just to start, last year my team has been able to save over 300 million to customers just by addressing this kind of moving throughout the spectrum, right? So quite an important thing to highlight. Then there is the third step of the tactical approach, which is the cloud rate optimization. So after you have your visibility set up, after you removed all the low-hanging fruit through easy enough implementations, then we dive into the commercial agreements with cloud vendors. And with cloud vendors, typically, either if you don't roll into a contract that's custom built for you, they do provide some rate optimizations for the usage of your resources, either 1 or 3 years. They have different discount options. Typically, it's 25 to 50%, 1 year or 3 years. And again, you want to identify, or the FinOps team should identify which services benefit from that commitment. And then, you spring for them. One important thing I want to stress: if you're scared of committing to a cloud vendor, because of the discount they're giving you, you're effectively committing less than the time the commitment is active. What does it mean? If they give you a 25% discount over the resources you're willing to commit if you stay for 1 year, the break-even point is effectively 25% sooner than the end of the year. Okay, so that means that if you have a 1-year agreement, or you're committing for a 1-year, let's say, optimization, that gives you 25%, you're actually committing not for 12 months, but for 9. And anything you do from the 9th month onwards, you're not losing anything. You're just, making money. So this helps de-risk a bit the commitment, and it's a valid resource and a valid way to move forward. And actually, I argue, should be the default way of moving forward when you have in the cloud. If you're jumping on the cloud, set aside the testing phase, right? If you're having production workloads in the cloud, it's highly unlikely that you will ever get out of it in 1 year or 9 months, unless you already have it on the roadmap. If you're telling me September 24, we don't have a roadmap to move out of the cloud, you should commit at least 1 year. Because there's no way you can get out of the cloud unless there is something catastrophic in 9 months. And the flexibility you're getting by not committing and using this metered approach of the cloud is effectively something that you're paying, right? As I said before, you're paying 25 to 50% more than actually you could get. So again, my recommendation is that get your visibility set up. I showed you how you could do this, either with native tools, GUI tools, however. Move into getting the waste out of the picture, so you have a clean snapshot of what is actually your baseline usage of the cloud. And then spring for a 1 year or 3 years commitment, depends, of course, on your baseline. Typically, databases, caching services are more stable than compute. This is a bit more technical for you, but again, compute depends on your environment. What we've seen is a bit more seasonal. It can go up and down, whereas databases are typically staying stable, right? They have a lower frequency change rate. And again, as I said, opportunity cost. The cloud vendors always tell us, hey, it's cool, the cloud, because you don't have to commit. You don't have to go ahead and go for this massive upfront cash, let's say, cash out immediately. You're right in that sense, but when the vendors front the flexibility first, what they're really asking you to focus on is on a rate that's higher than it could be. And so moving away from I value the flexibility to what is actually my timeline as a technology company in using the cloud is the right approach to then focus back on how can I push the best rate possible for my cloud consumption. So that's what we found out. I have a bunch of case studies here from different levels. The first one is a B2B data exchange company, which had some around 15K. I'm going to go quickly here, but 15K per month. They had an hands-on CTO, one team lead, 4 operators, but they didn't have a lot of IT team bandwidth to go for renewal. And they had, to go for optimization. They had a renewal coming up with us. So they wanted to, we wanted to apply this playbook with them. And what we've done is just we identified some priorities with them. Just the first one, waste reduction. And so we just slashed a bunch of waste into load balancers, NAT gateways, and backups. These are, some of the services we were able to reduce. We optimized their rates by springing for the commitments. And then they went for the commit renewal with us. So they got also some discount percentages on top. What that meant is that, as I said, 10% of the reduction in the cloud monthly bill, that's kind of in line with our targets. 22% of the reduction combined in all the cloud rate optimization plus extra 2% from another optimization. And then, of course, we got the commitment on top. The percentage is not it's not something it's not something we want to publish. So again, this approach worked for them, and they saved roughly around 2.5K plus the discount that they got on top, and they got the reports. The second case study is a bit higher in the complexity, 80K per month. So we're talking about a company that's an UK-based educational SaaS company, CTO vacant. They had a platform team and then product teams that were using the platform, so the cloud. And there was a massive pressure from the board up to saying, hey, guys, you have to slash 50% of your bill. Otherwise, we can't make it. Now, any company you get this type of ask is you clearly see the disconnect between finance and tech, right? You cannot say slash 50%. Otherwise, you're just basically saying slash. Ideally, you are asking me to slash 50% of the features we have. So what was the priorities we come up with? The first one is FinOps team. Like we need to talk between finance and also it's a bigger company. So we need to talk about this finance and team setup. We need to have cost allocation. We need to have cost optimizations. And with the waste reduction and rate optimization I mentioned before. And then we need to drive into unit economics. So we did that. We did a 3-part workshop. We identified some KPIs to track, right? FinOps KPIs, things like, how much of our optimizations are getting used, how much waste do we have, that kind of stuff. And that is the board pressure. Then we had the tagging strategy in place. We had the dashboards with the KPIs for each of the platform for the platform team and each of the product team. Then we did a rate optimization that saved them 7.5K per month. And then with the unit economics, we were using our tool to ingest also business metrics. In their case, how many users they were using the platform and also how many subscriptions they were selling to enterprises, right? Because that's where they package their contracts. The third use case is actually a big automotive company that's multi-billion, multiple hundreds of billions, investing in clouds. This is a bit more complicated story. I'm just going to quickly browse through it. Idea is that the CTO had the sense that they were throwing away millions per year because they weren't efficient enough. As TAMs, we were providing this kind of information, but nothing was getting done. And the cloud leads were saying, hey, we did what we could. So we started to create a FinOps team or a cloud center of excellence in other terms. with centralized optimization purchases, dashboards, things like that. And however, there was no culture attached to it. It was just tooling. And as you can imagine, nothing was getting done at that point. But then COVID hit. This is a story of 2020, of course. COVID hit, no one buying cars, which is actually something very relevant today as well. And so the company scrambled to find up cash flow, right, without shutting everything down. So at that point, there was a reorganization in the support contract. Well, this is red tape. Cost optimization workshops were kicked off. Virtual roadshow across all the different functions with dashboards, KPIs, data-driven discussions, waste reduction, so focus on the low-hanging fruit I mentioned before, and follow-up meetings with programmatic approach in order to get things done. What happened is that this company recovered 8 million the first year. The team then got leeway in order to develop new features. But then what happened after 12 months, they go back to the previous setup, right? So they go back to crawl. In this case, it was a successful example, but it was also a bit of a failure. So what we learned is that there was a moment of focus that really helped the company. But then because there was not enough buy-in from executives, not enough focus as a culture, so the thing collapsed when the urgency faded. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to create a huge, massive spike in attention and then things go back to normal, because then it is fundamentally pointless. What we want to do is just to keep a constant attention and bring it up in the priority list so that it's part of the culture, it's part of the way you run your company. So if there are any questions, please add them in the Q&A. I see there is one. If I can find my mouse. So are there any, so the first question I see is here. Okay. Are there any off-the-shelf applications for managing FinOps across your stack, or is the Excel the way? Well, I would say that the landscape has clearly accelerated in the past even 2 years, right? Aside from Do It, we do have our own tool that, as I said, it collapses all the analysis on the billing metrics of your cloud consumption and is able also to ingest data from your business, right? But I would say that the tooling in the landscape has really evolved. Excel is great because finance people use it, and there is a bit of, it's actually a thing, right? You don't want to pry Excel out of finance people's hands. It's how they trained, it's how they use it every day. They have a huge experience on that. So it's very difficult to kind of compete in that space. However, they don't have to be one or the other, especially when you're looking into things like higher intelligence, higher awareness. So definitely, as I said, in the FinOps space, the FinOps Foundation has this certification program for tools, and that's the first place to look, of course, after the Do It website. Oh, another question. What are some components of FinOps that's crucial to get the finance folks bought in? Well, I would say that the first element that they want to get to, at least in our experience, is the actual addressable cash flow that you can free up, right? So the framework and everything else that's been discussed in the cultural side, it's important. It's important to keep it going, but if you want to have the CFO in, you want to give them how much cash flow do I have, and also the other piece is that how much stable your spend is going to be. When I was dealing with customers migrating from traditional on-prem IT to the cloud, the CFO pushback was always, hey, but I have no control how much you're going to spend. I have no idea. So if I have a data center lease, I know that I'm spending 5 million per year for the next 5 years, and that's it. yeah, depreciation and all that kind of stuff, but that's it. In cloud, you can leave something on by mistake, and I have a hole of the size of hundreds of thousands of dollars next month. So I think the two things that you want to bring on board CFOs with is stability, or at least predictability of spend, and show them that you are able to get a hand of it because you have a lot of checks and balances in place, cost anomaly detection, accountability structure, action structure, all that kind of stuff. And of course, the materialized view of how much you're going to save in the upcoming months or weeks or years. What's the best practice for CTO to work with cloud cost? Regular cost review is enough. Yes, it's is enough. I have a section on that in a second. So, but typically, I would say that as a CTO, you want to review the costs for sure, but you want to more than review the costs. I would say you want to review the KPIs that the FinOps team has set up with you that represent a business metric. So you don't want to see how much you spend in compute or storage this month. You want to see how much each new user is going to cost you next month, or how much is going to cost you, how much has costed you this month, or how much of your commitment is being spent. You know, these kind of higher degree metrics that are really entrenched into the business, more than just the cost review. Because if I told you I'm spending 150K in databases, and then the next month I told you I'm spending 140K in databases, you say, oh, well, we saved 10K. The value is just the 10K. Actually, what does it mean to the business? We might not know. So that's where the CTOs or the executives should push the team forward, is that, okay, we start with the cost review. We have to start there, but we have to build something a bit more of a higher intelligence than that. How do we best track improved efficiency if the cost baseline is naturally growing? That's actually a great point. You want to split that. You want to split, and you're able to do it with FinOps, between customer growth that's happening naturally and homogeneously versus spikes in inefficiencies. And that's what rolls back to what I was telling you before. If you're metering how much your costs are growing and also how much your customer base is growing, and the ratio, I'm simplifying a lot here, but the ratio stays the same, your efficiency hasn't changed. So your cost of doing business is the same because you're making as much revenue as you were making before in percentage. Of course, the total numbers is higher. So that's one of the objectives you as a CTO should set to your teams and say, guys, I want to dissect between customer growth and inefficiency. Let's find a metric or multiple metrics that track that. How do you know which will add more savings between RIs, savings plans, and cuts? Well, that's so if we're talking about percentage that they're published, so you know about that. It's the idea here. They work slightly differently because some of them ask you to commit to a dollar amount every cycle. So every month or every hour, you should spend X amount of dollars. Whereas others ask you to purchase a fixed amount of resources, which is then converted, of course, in dollars. To be honest, it really depends on your tech mix. And at that point is, the answer is not a level playing field. It's like a skewed plane where you naturally, once you have set up your technical roadmap and you know where you're going, then the vendors give you one option to get the most discounts. And typically, The Pareto principle of which one is the best is not about RIs, savings plans, or cuts. It's about how long you want to commit, right? That's giving you the biggest control, 1 year or 3 years. So that's the first question you want to ask yourself. Should I commit for 1 year, which is effectively 9 months, or should I commit for 3 years, which is effectively 18 months, because you get the 50% discount? So that's up to you. Right. We will have another section at the end. I just want to quickly talk about the strategic approaches. So zooming really out and really going into the executives board level. The first one is that you have to set up two things, the cloud policy and a cloud governance. The cloud policy is a statement of intent. What's the execution of cloud-related activities? So you say, my data analytics business or my data function will stay in the cloud, right? And will stay in the cloud because we think it's the best place to adapt to technology trends. And or maybe you could say, we're not going to use the cloud for specific workloads or for specific areas of the business because that's not according our principles or not according our, not following our, let's say, business needs and whatever. Once you set up the cloud policy, most of you should have it already, then you have a cloud governance, which is the processes, how you're going to be using the cloud. And that's where the FinOps team really kicks in, right? Just barges the door down and says, okay, out of all the processes regarding security, regarding security principle, you also chuck in a service regarding the FinOps part. So cost visibility, cost attribution, chargebacks, all that kind of stuff, right? So it's part of the cloud governance. That's where your KPIs, the ones that we discussed before, really kicked in, right? So policy first, governance second, and in the governance, there should be a high priority list along with security, which we don't create a cloud policy and cloud governance without having a security aspect in place, right? So I know some of you maybe are doing also the CISO, role or chief security officer. That's absolutely fine. Let's not forget about security, but now we bring another piece on the table. The other thing is find a team, build a team. Now, if, of course, your organization is allowing you to, you want to hire maybe somebody externally, that's okay. Do not hire contractors for that. Simply because hopefully everything I just told you about is about a cultural change, is about something that's continuously injected into the lifeblood of your company. If you have a contractor kicking that off and then nobody picks it up afterwards, waste of tens of thousands of dollars. So if your company allows, you should have somebody dedicated to that function. As a CTO, you can decide how much involved you want to be. Typically, not too much involved, right? The tooling setup, the data sources creation, the data sources analysis, the low-level stuff, it's something that's not worth CTO time. You should have somebody dedicated to it. You can pick them internally from engineering. Typically, the FinOps team is a multi-functional team, so you have someone from engineering, finance, kind of working on the topic, product, okay, working on the topic, reporting to you as a CTO. But you know your company more than, of course, anybody does. So, but just want to say that companies that are successfully investing in FinOps, they are doing it with internal employees, and so that's where you should really focus on. Don't think about contractors. In terms of organization, again, from the cultural change and from the organizational change, these intersecting kind of responsibilities create some friction, right? So from a FinOps team perspective, the engagement model and how this is being set up is something that's clearly important. And the FinOps leader responsibility, so the person you will appoint will have the responsibility of reducing that friction. However, you as executives, you will set the tone. the culture and the objective. You will make it a priority for your organization. And this is incredibly important because, again, so if you go through the framework that I presented before, there might be the temptation to say, oh, individual contributors can do a lot of this stuff. Yes, but without executive buy-in, it's not a priority for the company. It's not something that the company really sets their direction towards. And it will, happen exactly like it happened at the automotive company. It will fall, or it will be just one person doing something and then nobody else really focusing them. So your responsibility as an executive is really to set up this as a priority. Also because it's critical. It's critical because it drives the momentum, as I already said. It graduates things from nice to have to a priority. There is a massive benefit in accountability and also creating this common language in the technology space where CEOs, CTOs, board members, finance, engineering teams are kind of understanding each other. Maybe not perfectly at the beginning, but they will. And also, I think from an executive perspective, helps you prioritize investments. You know where your inefficiencies are. You improve your budgeting capabilities for sure, right? Because you don't have like, okay, we're going to invest other 50 million next year on cloud, right? No, because you have KPIs, you have vision, you have accountability, you know how to be surgical in those investments. And so that gives you a bit more controls to steer the ship. You just don't have one single big rudder to move left or right. You have nimble controls to really tune the efficiency of that. And also the old, let's say the saying that cloud is too complex, that there is a massive amount of complexity again in understanding how cloud spend is created, that goes away with a bit of effort, of course. So from the best practices, tooling, how should it look like? Near real-time reporting, something that has data available now, not available in 1 month for the last 3 months, right? So something that has daily, even hourly data frequency. You want to have anomaly and budget alerts. You want to have ability to split those reports and those dashboards, those visualizations per team, per workload, for any taxonomy you want. And again, in the crawl, walk, and run phase, you want to have further down some complexities. For example, some of these tools are available via APIs, and you can create all sorts of fantastic stuff. Again, if your engineering time allows you to, maybe that's not the case, but ideally, that's a type of mastery you want to get to. Because again, if you think about it, it's called FinOps, and really echoes DevOps, which was all the rage 10 years ago. And right now, nobody thinks about DevOps anymore, right? It is. That's the way you develop software. There's no fantastical way, or there's nobody who's not implementing some of those DevOps practices. It's just because it took over and it's stuck, sorry. And same will happen with FinOps, hopefully, but I'm strongly believer in that. So again, all these kind of advancements are things that you should see coming up pretty soon. The other thing is FinOps is not about saving money, it's about making money, right? Of course, I focus on cash flow free up, but not the case, because as we discussed in the questions, cloud spend can drive revenue, can signal customer base growth, because you take the inefficiencies out and you understand your core growth that's due to the growth in your cloud spend, and that correlation can be tuned, depending on your efficiency, and also again free up resources to increase the developer velocity. It's data driven, so there's no fancy intuition about it. It's just very structured, and as I said, it's a culture that's ongoing. That's not a one-off solution. It's something that is a priority for the organization. And then again, allows you to take advantage of the cloud the real way. So not take advantage of the cloud from what the vendors want you to, but from the things that you need, not what you use, right? So the usual pitch for the cloud was pay for what you use and not for something else. Now we want to pay for what you need, not for what you use, which is again step further into the efficiency scale. You want to focus on the business metrics again. Cost is a great introduction, but again, business metrics, higher level understanding. It's the way to go. Cloud unit economics, and being able to evangelize those new metrics across the company. And of course, moving between elastic costs, a reduction of costs, and things that focus progressively towards profitability instead of just being seasonality or just pure cost reduction for the sake of cost reduction, which means in cloud fundamentally shutting things down. Right, we are just about to end, so I'm just going to browse through the questions. I think I picked up pretty much some of all of them. All right, maybe not. Let me check. Are there any off-the-shelf applications? We already answered that. What are your strategies for getting better buy-in from exec? Right, that's that's a very good question. This depends, of course, on the executive and depends on the priority you're seeing in your organization, right? There's no cookie cutter approach for something that's highly contextual as a company priority. If a company is VC funded and is looking to expand that funding, I think that the idea of being more efficient in the way they're spending, while of course increasing and having a good grip on how customer growth is going, I think is a powerful message to deliver. If the company is instead drying up their VC funds, or they are drying up the investments from the board members or from the investors, the pitch is actually the opposite. It's like, okay, we're getting better understanding of how we are spending in order to drive a bit more efficiency. So the core idea goes back to what I said at the beginning, right? The core idea is you want to have higher visibility, you want to have massive accountability and energetic feedback loop, because you know where you're going to be going. So use these principles in order to tune your pitch, but fundamentally with FinOps you're gonna get those more levers set up. All right, so I think we are wrapping it up. Apologies for being 3 minutes late. I hope this was useful for you guys, and I really enjoyed talking to you and answering your questions. So hopefully see you around, and have a great day. Cheers, bye-bye.